All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Neinsel Rasmussen. I serve as the Area 2 Commander, which is Districts 4 and 8. And I also serve as your Department Training Chair. So that's why I head up this as the facilitator of this call. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're all here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Be the One mission. It's no longer considered an initiative. It's a mission for the American Legion nationally and worldwide, really, because we have departments that are also outside of the US. And so tonight, for the first time, we want to welcome Rick Jepson from Post 76 in Tremonton. He is going to, for the first time, give a presentation as the current department chair for Be the One. The department chair for Be the One was started by myself when I was state commander for the American Legion back in 23-24. And the need back then, at the time, the national commander was Dan Seehafer, and he had really pushed the mission for Be the One during his national commander year. And so that year, that's when decided to add the Be the One chair to the Department of Utah. We are encouraging people within their posts to have a member, if they're willing, to be the one chair within their own posts, perhaps have a committee at large if they choose to within their post, so that they have the opportunity to help veterans across the entire platform, not just within the American Legion, but also outside of the American Legion, to invite veterans to come into post meetings, really get to know the programs that are available, including the mission of Be the One, which is to end veteran suicide and to do suicide prevention among our posts. It's really important. And it's not just strictly for those that are receiving mental health services, but also for those individuals who, for a variety of reasons, are dealing with life, because life happens, right? And so tonight we'll start with Rick and his presentation that he has put together. And then after that, we'll move into Randy Edwards, who is our department chaplain, and what his role is and the things that Be the One ties to as far as him being the department chaplain. So I'm going to turn the time over to Rick and go for it. Thanks for doing this tonight, Rick.
All right, thank you. Like I said, this is brand new, and this is a great opportunity to be able to do this and talk about it. So, welcome everybody. And I just wanted to let you know I'm part of Post 76 up in Tremont, in Utah. I'm part of their honor guard as well, and the post chaplain as well. So I'm kind of excited to hear that tonight there's going to be some training on that as well. So, yeah. So, Be the One, of course, is American Legion. Our ability to be able to prevent veteran suicide. So Wolf is first kind of have an introduction of the American Legion mission and for Be the One, and introduce the Columbia Protocol, which talks about some of the facts of suicide and prevention, and then some misconceptions and facts, maybe a few stories, and then Be the One app. We'll actually talk about the app where it talks about the 6 questions designed to identify suicide risk factors and some points about communication and building trust. So can you see those slides in?
We can.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right. So more than a century, American Legion has advocated for the well-being of Americans, veterans, and their families. Yet there is no single deed or accomplishment that is more important than the prevention of veteran suicide. So since 9/11 attacks, the number of veterans who have taken their own lives far surpasses the number of American deaths occurring during the entire Korean War and the Vietnam War, Gulf War, and the global war on terror combined. So a veteran is 50% more likely to take his or her life than a person who has never served in the military. So, obviously this has got to stop. One person's too much. But statistics fluctuate, but the most important number to American Legion is 1, as in Be the one. Be the one to stop a veteran from taking his or own life. And if we can save one collectively, that's actually being able to save thousands. So that's important. So it's been called a campaign or a slogan and a phrase in the past or an initiative, but none of these words appropriately reflect what Be the One is to the American Legion. It is a mission. We must accomplish this mission by destigmatizing, which is to remove the negative associations with it and the issue of mental health. Veterans value courage. That's kind of an important thing, but they value courage and they want to ask for help. But through our buddy check and outreach programs, the American Legion doesn't sit back and just wait to be asked. We take a proactive approach to ask veterans if they are okay. Equally important is listening to them as well. The goal is to affirmatively and compassionately engage with the veteran by paying attention to the responses in their body language and other signs. So if the veteran is struggling or in crisis, we encourage the veteran to call or even text the 988 crisis number. But for better outcomes, it's probably best to see if we even watch the veteran actually make the call. And then make sure that and follow up later that, if they are getting connected with the needed resources. So communicating with family and members and friends of the veteran is really paramount. So they can be vigilant and support as well. So everyone can be the one and help reduce the number of veterans lost to suicide. So since 1919, Legionnaires have answered their nation's call. So I call on all of us to assist in undertaking the mission to be the one, to save the one. So the Columbia Protocol, it's officially known as a Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, or CSSRS. It was primarily designed by researchers at Columbia University in collaboration with a few other institutions like University of Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. And it was developed as a tool for the National Institute of Mental Health to study treatments for depression. So the CSSRS was created to provide a standardized, reliable method for identifying and asserting the risk just across the various settings. So American Legion has partnered with Columbia University and adopted and actively promotes the Columbia Protocol as a core tool within Be the One suicide prevention. So it's for the entire Legion family to confidently intervene and connect with veterans as they need the support. So suicide is an enormous challenge, and it's a tragedy. It's actually the 11th leading cause of death, and you can see from these figures that there are variations in data regarding concerns for suicide. Let me go to this next one. There we go. Make sure I catch up to the right one. Sorry, got to switch back and forth here.
Could you go back slide for a second?
Okay, you bet, just a second. That one or
The one that had the miss on it.
Wasn't that one, was it?
No. It had something about 1% or something. I couldn't read it. I went through.
Let's
Sorry.
see. That's okay. But anyway, I'll just kind of continue from right here, going back and forth just a little bit. But yeah, suicide is an enormous challenge and it's a tragedy. And so it's 11th leading cause of death. And so you can kind of see from these figures right here now that the causes of death, like the second leading cause of death for veterans under 45 is suicide. But then you look at the one there in the middle as well, that it affects, and it's been increased by 4.4% for 55 to 74-year-olds. That's the area I'm in right there. And we have a lot of veterans in our post that have been under 45 that we are keeping an eye on as well, some of those that served. So let me go right here then. It's important to note that most people with risk factors for suicide don't attempt suicide. However, the presence of these risk factors, especially when combined with warning signs, should be taken seriously. There isn't one reason why someone takes their life or contemplates suicide. And we know that it's the interplay or the various risk factors that come into play. So take note that when you're interacting with someone, perhaps someone that comes into American Legion Post and is talking about feeling like there's no hope, or they're in a lot of pain, or there's nothing they can do, that they're working through some legal matters, relationship matters, or just totally disconnected now that they came back from deployment and transitioning from the military or whatever. So now that these, as well as others, are a red flag, and this is why it's critical to know what to do and potential risk factors for suicide, and the fact that these risk factors exist at multiple levels. So the tipping point is kind of something to look at here. The tipping point is when risk factors and triggers become so severe that they outweigh protective factors. And when this imbalance occurs, that hopelessness sets in and suicide enters the equation. So it's important to understand both risk and protective factors. You know, the CSSRS, that Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, and the caring outreach can help increase hope for life. So more risk factors will increase vulnerability to triggers, instilling hope, and can help balance the scale. So boil it down, there's just kind of like two ways in kind of, we first, number one, we understanding the person's many areas for pain, mental health issues, trauma, loneliness, poor coping with alcohol, and number two, make it harder to access a method to die, especially the most lethal, which is firearms. So we don't want to talk about suicide as a means at all, or in a glorious way to end the suffering, or even compare it to others. There's a lot of famous people out there have done it, and they seem to glamorize that. Let's go to this next one. So we can understand the screening for those struggling. It goes beyond, the medicine aspect of treatment and towards the public health approach as well, because these targets, the public health approach targets families and individuals and communities, and that of course is what the American Legion really wants to do, is get as many people involved as possible. So it's important for everyone to know the facts, about suicide, and it's very clear that, in the research, if people don't know the right information about suicide, they may be very reluctant to reach out and screen or help somebody who might be at risk. So it's very important that we all know the right information as well as the misconceptions, which takes us to our next slide. So only clinicians can or should work in suicide prevention. Obviously, we know that it's a public health approach to suicide prevention includes clinicians, but everyone has a role to play in preventing suicide, engaging community stakeholders like financial counselors or peers can be an impactful way to prevent suicide. So, having a firearm loaded and unlocked is a very strong risk factor for suicide, much stronger than mental illness. I believe in 2022, firearms accounted for like 54.64% of all suicide deaths, which is 3 times the risk of suicide death in homes with firearms. So storing a loaded gun with ammunition at home was associated with a 4-fold increase in the odds of suicide death. So this is kind of a very, I should say, common myth, or means about safety works all around the world. Pesticides, bridge barriers, railroad track barriers, those are kind of means to help prevent it, other than just firearms. But in the UK with domestic, like here's an example, in domestic gas ovens, and when natural gas was introduced back then, which is free of carbon monoxide, the rate of suicide decreased. Firearms become the number one use or lethal means, that if that is not accessible, that kind of drops down the possibility. So means substitution does not usually occur, and if it does, it usually is with a less lethal method. So in many cases, a person does not know they are suicidal until they find themselves suddenly, thinking about ending their life. An unexpected event can cause this, such as a marriage ending or loss of job, severe legal issues, public humiliation, being bullied, etc. But multiple studies indicate the final decision to attempt suicide typically occurs within a few minutes of the act. Up to 40% of people who attempt suicide made the final decision just 5 minutes before making the suicide attempt. So this is kind of one of the biggest things. People get worried about that. Gosh, asking about suicide can form a connection with the person asking, but no, it can show empathy, and it can be a relief for a person to finally tell somebody about their thoughts of suicide. I don't know if anybody you've ever gone through that, but here's kind of a neat story that kind of talks about that. So in September 2000, at the age of 19, this Kevin Hines, he was suffering from bipolar disorder and chronic suicide. And when he went to the Golden Gate Bridge with the intent to end his life, he had made a pact with himself that if anyone on the bus or the bridge asked if he was okay, he would tell them everything, and then he wasn't going to jump. But sadly, no one did until after he had already committed to the act. And this is kind of the case with most people, what I've ever understood or heard. But the moment he let go of the railing, he experienced an instant and powerful regret, realizing he wanted to live. And he fell approximately 220 feet and 75 miles an hour. And the impact shattered 3 vertebrae. And really, against all odds, he survived the physical trauma and was kept. This is what's interesting part about this story, is that he was kept afloat by a sea lion that continuously nudged him up above the water until the Coast Guard could come and then rescue him. But after a long recovery, Hines dedicated his life to suicide prevention and mental illness and health awareness. And Hines emphasized that mental pain is treatable and that recovery is possible, reminding people that suicide is not the solution. Again, that's the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. There was one time in our post, there's no names mentioned here, but our leadership contacted me one time as being the post chaplain, about an individual that they had heard a couple of comments from, a couple of, red flags. And I'd always wanted to go over to him. It provided a good opportunity, not an excuse, but an opportunity to go over because we were talking about his shop that he had set up a lot of wood working items in there, and he's really good at things. But I thought I'd go over just to check with him. And first he was showing me around the place. We just kind of established a little rapport there, and was talking about a lot of his projects. And he hadn't been very active in our post, so I haven't seen him for a while. But I stay in touch with him. But anyways, after we established all that rapport, and he's telling me all the things he was doing, I just come out and just ask him how he was doing. He hesitated just for a few seconds. He didn't say anything, but his face kind of said it. I just said, so and so. I said, you're not contemplating self-harm or having suicidal thoughts, are you? He says, well, no, but it crosses my mind. And I said, heck, I've that's crossed my mind before too myself. Sometimes they're not serious, but nevertheless, it enters there. I says, so how are you? How are you on the scale? And we kind of talked about that, but just bringing it up to him, he felt good and he was able to talk through that. And I was really glad that I was able to get through that. So this kind of, takes us to our next slide about, looking at a few more misconceptions. So, actual existing data shows that more than half of people did not have a mental health diagnosis. We used to look at for individuals who looked like they had a mental health issue, and we missed helping over half of the individuals. Can any of you tell me? You look at somebody, can you tell? Not in the least bit. So stigma, you see the word stigma quite a bit, so that's just the action of describing regarding someone or something as worthy of disgrace or a great disapproval. But when you think about that, using this language does not increase stigma. The correct term to use is death by suicide, or died by suicide. So, suicide is not cowardice, because most people, like it says here, situations who attempt suicide, attempt it, and, in suicide, they want to stop it, but overwhelmingly, they have emotional pain and, they feel like they have no other options. So viewing suicide as a cowardly act will only increase the stigma. And that's what I've heard is a lot of people won't even want to seek help because they're going to feel like they're going to be judged. Okay, just misconception versus fact. After this one here is, that it's not selfish, because most of it's, situations people who are thinking about suicide are filled with hopelessness and feeling trapped and desperate and believe that their loved ones will be better off. So if we ever, try to view or give anybody the indication that we felt the suicide is a selfish act, that only increases the stigma. That's already been said, but so this one here, this is not the case. The number of deployments or the length of deployments are not associated with suicide risk. But we have found out, though, that if a service member, whatever they experience while deployed, that may be one of the main determining factors. So, suicide is a problem with pretty much anybody. You can affect anybody, like in these areas here. But suicide does affect those areas on this slide more than all those put together. This is just something it touches everybody, and so it's a ripple trickling effect. And obviously it's something that we have to stop. That's another thing. It doesn't discriminate about all ages and genders. Like when that one slide back, I was quite surprised that people under 45, that was a pretty large number that were committing suicide. But then it kind of surprised me when numbers of older people who have been through life and probably, you think, would master everything in life, but those numbers are increasing too. And that was surprising to me. So when you're looking at trying to find individuals, who you think might be affected by suicide thoughts, I mean, it can be anywhere, like obviously if they walk into our post or if we're at the gym or any other of these places you can see here, just anywhere you can kind of think of, try to be engaged with those and be aware. So we're just going to kind of go a little bit maybe into Be the One app. How many of you have heard of that? I mean, I don't know, by show of hands, have you heard of Be the One app? At the end of this, we'll have like some, if you haven't downloaded, we'll have some QR codes that you can look at. But anyways, we've all kind of just looked at this. If you look at this app, this is kind of right from the home screen. I'll just kind of go through these really quick. I just kind of clicked on the first thing there and, click here to continue. Ask that question. Are this for you or somebody else? So you'll see my answers here. And that they served in the armed forces. And it asks to share your location. You're going to want to do this because it'll give you all the resources and everything for those where the people are located at, and you'll be able to help them out. So it'll take just a little bit when it'll get that location. But so it asks, this is your core communication with a person, but within the last month, have they wished they were dead? This is one of the other questions asked, or want to never wake up. And so I put yes. I kind of pretty much put yes in all this to see what it would trigger off. And have they actually had thoughts about killing themselves? So when I hit yes, the next thing is, have they thought about how they might do this? Have they had these thoughts and had any intention of acting on them? I'm hitting all the red flags here. And this is what we have. This is like as an example, as if you've been through and talked to somebody. Have they ever done anything, started, to do anything or prepared to do anything to end their life? So this is the protocol questions that lists the risk factors, ups the risk factors. Was this within the past 3 months? Hopefully, it's something that is very recent. You don't want to think about somebody 3 months ago and then start thinking about it today, because I mean, obviously you don't want to hear about somebody who had died by suicide. So I would say, yeah, this is, this a starting point, starting at 3 months. So I just said yes. Kind of like when I went over to the shop and talked with that individual. If I would have got these vibes from that person, I would be doing this. So would you be willing to answer other questions about this person? I said yes. What's their age range? And then again, it's going to ask these kind of questions, these specific questions. And yes, it's going to ask this as well. I never saw that coming until I went on the app, but you know what? It's up to snuff with everything else that's out there. So once I got through all this, it went to that very final thing, and obviously it's saying that selected answers, it's a high risk. Please reach out and get into help. And this is again where you might sit with that person and have them call that hotline, and then of course follow up a little bit later to see if they actually got the help that they needed. Let's go to the next one. So this is kind of quickly the questions in a nutshell of what the app would have you run through when you're answering all those questions. And like I said, these slides and stuff will be available. It'll kind of take you through, like, this is the questions and the things you would like to do if they answer a certain way. Then it starts raising red flags there. Number 4 is in red if they've answered yes to all those questions. So that's kind of what the app takes you through. Okay. So go over here. So there's kind of a way, like how you ask questions, your delivery really matters. It's kind of like the salesperson at the used car lot, they can give you a really fancy delivery, to make the sale, but that's kind of maybe a poor example, but really how you approach somebody that's really showing some of the red flags or who's really expressing these issues, it's kind of important. So, effective communication, they're kind of key to building that trust that we had talked about. So you want to stay in the moment and kind of free ourselves so any distractions, so we can give our full attention to them, kind of look at their body language, some of the things that they may be doing as we're talking to them, and never lose, focus on the individual, on the one person, because you got to stay attentive and listen and hear to what they're saying and be calm and not afraid to ask those questions. Be very steady and clear. And of course, you don't want them to receive any judgment at all from what we say and how we say that. So yeah, the delivery is really important. Yeah, and reflecting back, people like that. If you say, so is what you're saying is that you've had some thoughts, but you've really never taken them seriously beyond thoughts, and you never thought about wanting to take your life. So, if you're paraphrasing it, you're wanting to fully know how they're feeling, then they're going to be more apt to, to open up to you and build that rapport. So then as well, take care of yourself afterwards too, because I know there's been a lot of people that told me when they've talked with somebody who was contemplating suicide, they were kind of, I don't want to say traumatized by it, but they're really affected by it. And I think mainly what all of them said was because they really did love the person. It was really tough for them. So if a person's at imminent risk, this is the thing right here. You got to quickly stay with that person, and give them all the reasons you can to stay alive. And of course, you got to follow up as much as possible. So you want to build up these networks with them, about the community and about their families, or any trusted friend, clergy, anybody. If they kind of don't want you, if they told you, I don't want you to tell anybody else, I think that's one of those things where you can kind of give, the assertion, be assertive to somebody else and let them know that this person's been going through, and tell them to be very careful too about their delivery and how they do that.
I buried two best friends now. Let me put it to you this way. They say that the battlefield and whatnot is probably one of the worst things that you can watch a friend go through. Now, watching them survive it and then watching them destroy themselves when they come home, that's what's worse. And that's the true battle. All your warriors, once they come home, some of them don't know what to do. It gives you, this place gives you a new sense of purpose. I might not be here today if this place. To me, that means a lot. New chapter in my life, new family. Those that are borderline, if they're looking for something to keep them going that they lack from their former life, this is kind of one of those places to go. We still have our situations here where some of us have issues, and it gives you a drive as you were to live. We're here for each other. If you ask me, that's our primary purpose with these clubs, is to give a new sense of home and belonging.
Of course, there they were talking about joining the American Legion. I don't know if any of you, this is going to be a little plug for recruitment. I don't know if any of you, when you went out and asked them about joining, they say they're good, like, or they don't want to spend the money to do that. And so you might kind of ask them, have you ever received any benefits, from the American Legion or from the VA? And if they say yes, you go, well, you can thank the American Legion because those funds go out to help other people. But here's one of my biggest plugs for recruitment is, as this person said on the video, American Legion gives them a purpose. I remember I used to have a FedEx person that was a member of the Navy that would always deliver me his packages, and he was always highly suicidal, and he'd always tell me when he come to deliver packages. And I told him to join us, and he kept saying he would. And in his own words, he said, "Yeah, I think maybe if I joined, that would give me a purpose in life." And I've seen that happen with a lot of people that's joined our post. We've had a pretty good surge in people joining. Another good point about that is I tell these people, hey, join. That way we know you. Because lots of times there's a lot of people out there we don't know. They might move in our community. And if they don't know and don't contact the American Legion Post, they won't have that support and that network. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen with the people that's joined our post. Got some pretty quiet people join our post, and it's been really good for them. So here's if you want to, I don't know if you have, you can still go on to the American Legion post, and you can go under the advocacy tab on the opening page of American Legion. The advocacy tab will drop down. Right off, you'll see Be the One. If you click on Be the One, you'll be able to follow a lot of the information there as well. And you can just look on your phones as well, the Play Store, or whatever, and be able to download these. But if you want to QR code that right now, then you can go ahead and do that. We can come back to that if you want. So anyways, pretty much done here. And just wanted to let you know that I'll be available. Of course, Ninesville, she's a legend in all this. She's been around, and Rick Mead has been around for a while. And of course, we have our department chaplain who's coming up next. But thank you. I don't know if anybody has any quick comments they want to make or any stories that they have themselves, but I wanted to keep this like about at the half-hour mark max, and I'm about right there.
Well, Rick, you did a great job. So congratulations on your first presentation.
Cool.
Great work. I do want to make a comment, and I'll tell you the reason why Rick was asked to be the One chair for the department was because of some of my experiences during my commander year with Post 76 and some of the things that they went through as a post in dealing with post members who were suicidal. And unfortunately, there was someone who took their life. But I want you to know from a perspective as a Legionnaire, just like all of the rest of you, I cannot stress the importance enough of really getting to know your members. Like Rick was saying, you can't tell oftentimes if somebody is having any suicidal ideation or is thinking about taking their life. And so I would venture to say that when you think of people or have known people, how many of you, when I ask this question, how many of you have known somebody who has dealt with suicide ideation or has taken their life?
I
By a
have.
show of hands. Okay. So every single person has raised their hand or has said yes. So what does that tell us as veterans? It tells us that no one is exempt from having those thought processes, not a single person, including even myself. I'll put it out there. So I think that sometimes one of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, how do I even approach it? Like, I'm not comfortable asking somebody if they're contemplating suicide. And to be honest with you, the listening part, the buddy check part that is saying those phone calls and getting to know individuals really well is probably the most important thing you could ever do when it comes to knowing the veteran. And that does not just mean within our posts. The invitation is, we cast that net and we say, um, all are welcome. All are welcome. And I think when we extend that invitation, we get to know people on a level. And if we're not comfortable asking the question, are you having thoughts of suicide? Like Rick was saying, and I just want to emphasize this more because I've heard this a lot from Legionnaires where they say, I don't even know. Do you just ask them? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. You just ask if they're having thoughts of suicide. And I promise you this, every time I've asked that question, which I've probably asked 100 times over, every single time that has happened, either they say, thank you for asking. Well, yeah, kind of, I've been thinking about things and I'm going through this. And there's never been a time where somebody has gotten mad at me and said, I can't believe you just asked me that. So I think that when we talk about be the one, be comfortable in your own skin about talking about it freely within your posts, your districts, department-wide, statewide, wherever you go, because you just never know that. And this is why the changing lives and saving lives, you would hear National Commander C. Hafer say it's personal. I can guarantee if I ask each one of you, is it personal to you when something happens to a loved one or to a veteran, and we never asked, or we didn't check in, or we didn't give them a call, or we didn't go have coffee with them at the Starbucks, or whatever the situation is, that we have an opportunity to do that. And we are in the business of changing and saving lives within the American Legion, no doubt about it. So thank you, Rick, for the presentation. I think it's a very important one. I do say this with the caveat also that if there is anybody on this Zoom call that is having thoughts of suicide, please reach out and please know that you're in a trusted space. Just know that. We are here as Legionnaires to help support each other. So with that said, I don't know if Randy made it on here. I'm kind of worried about him, to be honest with you. So I'm going to turn the time over to Rick Mead, and he is going to provide Randy's presentation that he provided to Rick as far as the content. So
Before we do that, I just want to double check. Jimmy Jones, after you posted that post on there, 9L responded yes, and I just want to just make sure that we don't need to have a further conversation about that with him.
Yeah, Jimmy, are you still on here? Can you see it on your end, Rick?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we need
follow
to
up with that.
Follow up on that.
Jimmy is not on here.
Okay.
Oh, Jimmy Jones?
Yes. Jimmy Jones, are you here?
I am here.
Okay, good.
Okay.
You kind of scared us there for a minute.
No, my yes was you asked, have you all known somebody? And I have lost a brother.
Okay.
A brother and a
Jimmy,
nephew
we
to
can
suicide.
ask. But Jimmy, we can ask, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
I just wanted to make sure. So I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you. Yeah,
right.
no, Jimmy, I appreciate you sharing that because that's just it, is that I don't think there's a single one of us that haven't had some situation where either someone's attempted, someone's having ideation, or someone has lost their life to suicide. So thank you, Rick, for doing that. And Rick Mead now. I have two Ricks presenting tonight, so I'll turn the time over to Rick.
Okay. Let me get this thing started here, and I'm going to ask the question one more time because I saw a PC sneak on during Rick's presentation. Randy Edwards, are you on, sir?
No, he's not.
Okay.
Okay.
Randy Edwards was going to be doing this presentation on being a chaplain and the American Legion chaplain. He actually has attended chaplain school in his time with the American Legion, and wanted to present the information that he has learned through some of that process. So this may be a little bit bumpy, but I want to go through this, and let me actually start. I've been in a place as the department adjutant where we did not have a department chaplain for a period of time when we're still looking to fill some slots and so forth. And I can tell you that a chaplain in any organization, whether it's the department or a post, fills a very important role. And it really is, and this first statement here is I think a key one, where it says the chaplain's attendance goes beyond offering open and closing prayers. It's really about learning every aspect of the post's work and what's going on within the post, and helping to facilitate that. The Legion founders, and I've got to, let me do one other thing here. I've got to move this thing around so I can get, there we go. The American Legion founders believed that God and country be treated as mutually exclusive if the United States is to survive and prosper. And that's why they created the office of the post chaplain, charging it with keeping the association high in the minds of members. As a spiritual leader, the chaplain is an integral part of all ceremonies. And just some personal experience. For some of you who may have known Greg Pop, he passed away a year ago. As a matter of fact, this month, from exposure. Well, he was stationed over in Afghanistan area, but his wife specifically requested that we do a post-everlasting ceremony at his funeral. And I had the honor of participating in that as well when that was put together. And it means so much to the families and helps them navigate through such a significant loss that it is a very clear support structure to families that lose a veteran or an American Legion member or anybody in their family. And that participation of the chaplain adds to the spiritual growth of both the post and its members. In addition to post officers, the chaplain should be in regular contact with local ministers, schools, hospitals, funeral directors, community organizations, so they will know what service and programs the American Legion Post offers. So this becomes an outreach function that can be done by the chaplain for each of those areas within the community in order to facilitate that communication and making sure that the community understands what kinds of things the post can actually offer to those people within the community. So who can serve as a chaplain? Department, area, district, and post chaplains are elected or appointed. Again, this is going to be a function going back to Constitution and bylaws training of whatever you've got in there for how those positions are selected. The national chaplain specifically is appointed. Our department chaplain is appointed, and that comes out after our state convention. The chaplains do not have to be clergy. In fact, most are not. Anyone who's willing to serve may serve. However, a chaplain should demonstrate spiritual maturity and be committed to the office. Otherwise, they will not provide the spiritual counsel needed by the commander and the members alike. Candidate for a chaplain should be a caring person with a strong desire to help others, have a positive attitude about him or herself, spiritual matters to the post district department they serve and the American Legion. They must be aware of their influence on others, must be willing to serve where there's a need, and chaplains has a responsibility to all.
By the way,
cannot be selected. I'm sorry? I thought I heard something. Question?
You did. Is there a question? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And the American Legion chaplain, what does a chaplain do? Be present at all Legion events, provide prayers, take parts in all rituals and ceremonies of the American Legion, provide spiritual leadership through the Legion's service to God and country programs, communicate with officers, members, and community organizations, visit the yield, bereaved, shut-in, disabled, and prospective members as well. So those are all things that the chaplain will be engaged in. Again, the candidate per cap chaplain should be considered of death, illness, problems, and other concerns seldom occur at the chaplain's convenience, except to adjust your schedule. Expect to adjust your schedule accordingly. Yeah, we don't have that. We don't have to adjust our schedules, I don't think, very, very often. So I'm being sarcastic there. Value confidentiality. And this is true for a lot of things that I know both as in talking with some of the chaplains, and then also in my role as a BSO, you come in contact with a lot of very sensitive information, and you need to be careful with that, and you need to protect it and make sure that you're maintaining that that you don't share it without permission, and you don't share anything that could be either embarrassing or make someone uncomfortable. Seek to be neutral when helping settle disputes. Seek to be a model in moral and ethical matters. It's helpful but not necessary to be an experienced public speaker. Chaplain may read prayers and others. And I wish I got to move this one because make sure what I'm thinking about. Yes, right. Keep it simple, stupid, or keep it silly. So there are a lot of resources that you've got access to. The American Legion Officers Guide and Manual of Ceremonies is one. Chaplain's Prayer Book, Funeral Directors, Hospital Administrator, Counseling Center, and Media. In conclusion, chaplaincy is essential work of the American Legion. No program would be complete without it. The chaplain position is an important one. Each chaplain should take pride in serving God and country. Be positive in your attitude towards the chaplaincy and the total work of the American Legion. Remember at all times, you are to keep confidences, your integrity, and all that the organization depends on it. A chaplain's presence is needed at all events. Mingle with people. Make it possible for members to easily contact you with their concerns and problems. Look sharp and be sharp. Properly wear a clean cap. As you pass a mirror, look to see if it's all is well. The chaplaincy, more than printed prayers. We've talked about that. It's service to others. The importance of the ministry is our opening daily. And then one final statement that Randy had in here was: look like a chaplain, act like a chaplain, and be a chaplain. Be the one, and thank you. So I will leave that now as the end of that part of the presentation. And thank you for putting up with my cold reading and presentation of that.
Thank you, Rick. As a side note to chaplains, how many of you as post members have a chaplain prayer book? Do you know what I'm talking about with the American Legion? Okay. So if you do not have one, they are ordered, and they can be ordered from Flag and Emblem. They're inexpensive to order. The reason why this is important, sometimes, as chaplains are across all denominations. And so it's important to follow the guidelines as a chaplain based on if you're going to be a post chaplain or district chaplain or department chaplain, that protocol is followed, because not everybody's the same belief system, right? And so we want to make sure that we're following that protocol for chaplains. So if your post does not have a chaplain prayer book, I'd encourage you to get one so that the post chaplain can use that as a guide for prayers. That does not mean that you have to do just those prayers in that prayer book. You can I've seen beautiful prayers that have been developed for invocations and benedictions that chaplains have put together, but they're non-denominational. And the funny part about this, though, in some ways, is that what do we always hear in the American Legion? For God and country. And so because we have different belief systems, it's just being mindful of that. I've seen it also with other American Legion family between the auxiliary, the SAL, and the riders. I've seen all different types of prayers, I'm sure, just like so many of you have as well. So the reason why the chaplain part of this was put together in conjunction with Be the One is because to me it's obvious, but it's because when you're dealing with all walks of life and that are veterans and their family members, that it's important to be able to work with the different belief systems that you're working with within the American Legion. And not only that, but if somebody is really having a difficult time and needs your support and they trust to talk to you and for you to listen and to help them, there might be an opportunity as well for the post chaplain, the district or department chaplains to work directly with you as a Be the One liaison and or chair within your post in conjunction with the post chaplain. So that's why we coupled these together. Our hope is that you come away from this tonight with, usually there's a lot of information that we're pushing out during training, but we're hopeful that it's helpful to you and that you take this back to your posts and come up with some ideas around what you can do better within your posts to address Be the One, and also developing a fuller program for your post chaplain. So with that said, any questions, suggestions, ideas, things that you'd like to share with this group before we end the training tonight? We just have a couple minutes. Yes, Marty.
When will this be on the website? Because we've gone in, I've had posts go in, and we can't find any training for 2025 at all. And I thought all these meetings are supposed to be on there. So what website should we go to find the 25 training?
Rick.
You should go out to UT Legion, and I've got a couple of things that I've got to do. I've been working on a couple of other issues with the website, and so I will get that cleaned up this weekend, and it will be out there by the time Monday morning hits.
Yeah, because there's no 25s at all out there.
I know, that's my fault.
Okay.
So I've got to get that done.
We have so everybody knows, for those of that you are new on here, when you go to utlegion.org, that is the department website. And on utlegion.org, under the tab that says training and news, you need to start at the top and just keep on scrolling, because there's a lot of information underneath that tab, including the Blue Hatter department newsletters, the information that Rick will be working on this weekend to get uploaded into the website for training and news, which will include PowerPoint slide presentations that we've done over this past year, as well as, is the website at the point now where it can also do the recordings, or no?
Yes, that's part of where I'm a little sideways with that, but because I've actually got a YouTube channel now for the Department of Utah, and that's where these videos will be as well.
So all of that is forthcoming and will be coming. So Marty, thank you for asking that. Any other questions, suggestions? Yes, Rick.
Nigel, I just encourage everybody here, if they want to, they can go to the American Legion main page and hit advocacy tab, and then click on Be the One. And right there, it'll come up where it says changing license, saving license. They can go ahead and take the training themselves from the Columbia Protocol and go through that. And then, you can get a certificate of, I'm the chairman, but I'm not going to be any smarter than anybody else. After they go through that, pretty much what you saw tonight was that. And it takes a little over an hour, but it's
Oh, he froze on us. So while he unfreezes, what he's talking about is if you go to betheone.org or if you go to legion.org for Be the One and just type in the search engine Be the One, you can open up that page. And there is a ton of resources available there, including some upcoming training that's coming up here in January over the next couple of weeks that's free to you. So go ahead and get your post members on there. Go ahead. Are you Rick we're having a hard time hearing you, Rick.
Yeah. Chris Brasted put that link out there in the chat if you want to go take a look at that.
Thank you, Chris. So any other questions or things that you want to suggest? Sorry, Rick, you cut out on us.
I know.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you everybody for being on here tonight. If you need any additional support or training, please get a hold of me. I serve as your department training chair. I'm happy to come and do trainings through district get-togethers or post get-togethers, areas. We're really trying to keep that going forward. The last thing I want to say is that most of you know, but for those of you that don't know, the Utah Legion College resolution was passed at the DEC in December. There will be some information forthcoming for 2026 later this year. There's a lot of work behind it. And the exciting part about this is that as we move forward, there's some pretty great plans out there to have a Utah Legion College that can serve our members on a regular basis. And there'll be some criteria to meet, such as taking basic training beforehand. That's one example. But just please let your post members know that that will be coming as soon as we get all of that ironed out and all those details taken care of, and then we'll release that. We are ready to go and everything's under approval. So with that being said, have a great night.
Hey, Nigel.
Okay.
Nigel, can I talk
Recording
to you
is being
and
stopped.
Rick Mead?
What's that?
Can I talk to you and Rick Mead when we're off?
Oh, sure. No problem.